Hello there. What's going on, everyone? Today I want to talk to you about the future of Imperial Assault since Atomic Mass Games has now taken over the Star Wars miniatures games, Legion, X-Wing, and Armada. This has left a lot of people curious about what exactly is going to happen with Imperial Assault. So basically, a lot of this video is going to go back towards February of 2020. At the Gamma, or maybe it was January, but beginning of the year, Steve Horvath had a sit down with Team Covenant, and they did a big interview about the future of the games and where everything was headed. They talked about this 3-year plan, and during that interview, there was a big discussion about Imperial Assault, and while he couldn't say much, he did say that definitively, Imperial Assault's story was not over. It still sells, they still make core sets, they still produce Imperial Assault, and they still sell it. People are still buying it, and so they're going to continue to make it and sell it for now until such time that things change. And then there's going to be more stuff eventually, but he couldn't really talk about that. All he said specifically was their story was not over. So like he had to be very careful with his words to not say that there's like another expansion or a second edition or something like that coming. Now, Imperial Assault largely fell by the wayside once Star Wars Legion came out because Legion was in many ways like a cancellation of Imperial Assault, or so it seems, that the minis were in such a similar scale, and like 32 to 28 millimeter or something like that, like very, very, very close. And also that, Imperial Assault's skirmish format was a lot like a version of Legion. Just with the heroes, more like a smaller Legion battle. So the games were so similar that it really kind of led to the end. We had one final wave of expansions for Imperial Assault once Legion was announced, and then that was it. Now, a lot of this likely has to do with Hasbro having the rights to board games. Imperial Assault is classified as a board game, and it stands to reason that due to licensing rights and all of that, Fantasy Flight kind of got into either some trouble or potentially had to share some of the profits or something like that with making Star Wars board games, at least for the current round of contracts. Now, they have talked at length about this 3-year plan for all of their minis games, and presumably that was, we've had 1 year of that go by so far, so we're looking at 2021 and 2022. So probably somewhere around the end of 2022 or the beginning of 2023 is when we'll start seeing some big news and big shakeups in the licensed miniatures line and board games of Star Wars, as it applies to companies like Asmodee and their Fantasy Flight and Atomic Mass and things like that, and even maybe Epic, which now takes over the RPGs. But since we've seen this year so many of the Star Wars properties leave Fantasy Flight Games, it has a lot of people wondering, are they going to just wait it out and then create another Imperial Assault big box expansion? A lot of people have been waiting for that Endor expansion, because while they have said multiple times that they view Imperial Assault as a complete game, and by some accounts it absolutely is, and by other accounts it's missing critical characters like Yoda and or Ewoks. By the way, we did see Ewoks on one of the playmats, right? There was Ewok art developed for Imperial Assault, so there's obviously at least one more box that is supposed to have come out. And then, of course, with all the movies and everything, Rogue One could really use an Imperial Assault set. There's a lot of extra content that could be developed for Imperial Assault, especially now with The Mandalorian. Hello! We could definitely get more Imperial Assault. So, has a lot of people wondering what's going on. Well, here's what we do know, and here's where we can get some inference. Atomic Mass Games said specifically they were taking over the Star Wars miniatures games, and they pointed out specifically X-Wing, Armada, and Legion. They did not say they were taking over Imperial Assault. So we can only assume what we know is that Fantasy Flight will maintain Imperial Assault. And Fantasy Flight also is maintaining their Star Wars board games, even though there may or may not be any new content for those, like Star Wars Rebellion, which they have said is a complete game. And I feel kind of similar to that. It does feel like a complete game, and it's a fantastic game. But it really feels like it needs Thrawn. Right? It feels like it's a game that was like 99% complete, and it could just use a little bit more just for flavor, just to kind of get things caught up. And now I think that doesn't mean that it needs an expansion. I think that what Star Wars Rebellion needs is a second edition. But similar to Outer Rim, which is a game that is not 99% complete. Outer Rim definitely needs an expansion. Has not gotten one yet. Should have had one already. And I wonder what the problem is with the delay. Why we haven't gotten it yet. Is it related to this? And so all of these things kind of point towards what direction is Imperial Assault going to go. Because we still have Outer Rim and Rebellion under Fantasy Flight. Presumably, Imperial Assault will remain there as well. It does make you wonder what direction are they going to go with Imperial Assault. So I'm going to bring about a couple of possible scenarios. One possible scenario is that all of the Star Wars board games are going to move to another studio in the same fashion that the Star Wars RPG moved to Epic, and then the Star Wars miniatures moved to Atomic Mass Games. That may happen, and if that happens, then at least you'll know that that is all going to be under, it'll still be under like Asmodee or something, but under a different studio. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if either a new studio was created, but I don't really think that, because they have plenty of studios already that create Star Wars games, like Z-Man games, for example, or Plaid Hat games, or something like that, right? I think one of those actually is not under Asmodee anymore. But let's just go for Z-Man for right now, right? They have Z-Man games. Maybe that will happen. Maybe Z-Man will now take over well, not now, but maybe in a year from now or something like that, will take over the Star Wars board games. So I could see them doing something like that, where they wanted to go with somebody else who already has a board game studio. If indeed some of the rumors about Fantasy Flight kind of going away end up being true. But I think that would probably coincide with other sci-fi titles moving, like Twilight Imperium, for example. So that could potentially happen at some point. Still not sure, so I don't want to get too far into speculation there, but something along those lines is a possibility. Another possibility is that the rest of the stuff stays with Fantasy Flight Games, and instead they follow suit with what they've done for Descent. And now what would that mean? So Descent, big dungeon crawl game, was kind of like the father to Imperial Assault. Imperial Assault came out afterwards and basically was Star Wars Descent. Well, they just came out with a new edition for Descent. It's not actually out yet, but it's just been previewed, and that one is going to be more, campaign driven, and it's going to focus more on the campaign, and I think that that's probably a direction for them to go. Now, the problem is Descent has a lot of miniatures, so it's like Fantasy Flight is still going to be doing miniatures. They're not losing their miniatures, and that is a little bit of a confusing thing to me, because if you wanted to take the miniatures away from Fantasy Flight, you only took Star Wars miniatures. What about all their other games that have miniatures? And there are many. That is the interesting part, because Descent has really nice and highly fine detail sculpted minis, and you still have Lord of the Rings miniatures, like with Journeys in Middle Earth. You still have Twilight Imperium, which has spaceship miniatures. So you still got science fiction miniatures. You still got Descent, and on all these other miniatures. So like, why did you really need to focus on the minis? That's there's a lot of questions there. But it could be that they just go in the same direction with Descent, or if Descent happens to move to a different studio, then maybe maybe Imperial Assault moves there. But that's kind of like the previous one. What also might kind of follow suit in the Descent path is that Imperial Assault comes back with a new edition. This might be something that they do. They might decide, there was enough power creep in Imperial Assault that they had to create like new cards for Darth Vader and new cards for this and new cards for that, and there became like must-buy expansions to get a lot of those cards that kind of rose everything up. And then I think Imperial Assault was one of those games that was really bad at power creep, in that the initial vision of the game changed so much every few months that the only things that were competitive were the most recent wave of expansions, for the most part. Not 100%, but the most recent stuff was always the most competitive, and that's kind of a bummer when you get to that point, because you have to buy the most recent thing. Like, if you like running this, well, whatever comes out 2 months from now is going to completely wipe away your favorite build out of the meta. And that was for the competitive like skirmish mode of Imperial Assault. If they do move forward, I have a feeling that skirmish is probably going away. I don't think we'll see skirmish anymore, because that is too much of a direct competitor with Star Wars Legion. Now, it's not exactly the same thing. there are a few minor differences, but I think from a certain point of view, it's still a 1v1 minis game, a 1v1 tactical skirmish minis game. Like, from a certain point of view, Legion and IA skirmish are the same thing. Now, if you're a player, an active player of one, you're going to notice those differences a lot more than somebody who's just like passing them on a shuffle. This one's got minis and I fight him. This one's got minis and I fight him, and they're dudes on a map, It's from a certain point of view, they're very, very similar, and marketing might not like that, so they may want to distance them a little bit more. And all of the most recent major content announcements that we've got from Imperial Assault, were in the form of the digital companion app, which is completely skewed towards that cooperative play, towards that to that campaign play. And that is really one aspect where Star Wars miniatures games are lacking, is in that campaign, that narrative event. And that's really the strength, I think, of Imperial Assault. Not to say anything that the skirmish game wasn't enjoyable. I actually enjoyed the skirmish game quite a bit. I just had one key problem with it, and that it took forever to set up a map. So you did have all these play mats, but then if you wanted to play on different mats, you now had to maintain a whole bunch of different play mats if you wanted to do that. And then tournaments began to get difficult because a lot of people had made their own playmats to save time, but then because it wasn't an official FFG product, then you couldn't use homemade playmats, even though it was identical, it was the same thing. So there was this a whole bunch of almost like, I don't want to say politics, but it was this weird structure of well, can we use it or can't we use it? Come on, dude, So the playmats was a pain in the butt, and it really slowed down tournaments, and so that's something that I'd love for them to get away from. And also became kind of a money sink. It was like, hey, you got to buy a new playmat every 2 months or whatever. So, I just didn't really see the value in that. And I think Legion kind of does it better. And by the way, Legion is getting enough depth of characters now that they can do that hero mode where it's just you just pick named heroes, and go up against other named heroes. And that, and I've done some battle reports for Star Wars Legion related to that. It's basically Imperial Assault at that point, when, if you're just going with the heroes and not the, as many big armies. And I think that's really fun. I think that's actually super, super fun. And, I think it's maybe more fun than Imperial Assault. I don't know, but that's a matter of preference, and we're all going to have our different opinions on that. So basically, Imperial Assault, a lot of people are saying this was the final nail in the coffin. I disagree, because I think if the game was done, they would say that. In the past, anytime a game has had its final nail in the coffin, they've come out and announced it, usually ahead of time. Look at Star Wars Destiny. When that was announced, they still had 2 more expansions in the pipeline. One that was getting ready to come out, and one that hadn't even been printed yet that they gave out for free. So you're able to, or at least that they said they were going to give out for free. I never got it, so I don't know. I don't know exactly how that was fulfilled, but they usually announce a game's end well before, and they did the same thing with the Star Wars LCG. They announced the end of that before that last expansion even came out, and like, hey, this is going to be the final expansion, even with the thought that they might lose money because people might not buy it. Their track record has been to, like, if we don't announce that it's over, it's not over. And so the fact that they have not announced that Imperial Assault is over means that it very well may not be over. We're gonna have to wait and see. Now, things always change. And this game is kind of in a unique position that it's had this very, very long kind of hiatus where it's just not had any new product. And granted, maybe we're spoiled by the fact that we have so many games that get a regular influx of new products. And, you can still enjoy a game without an influx of new product. I play Star Wars Rebellion all the time without an influx of new product, and it's wonderful. And a lot of the board games you play have that. Miniature war games, that kind of depend on it a little bit more, but it's not absolutely necessary once you have enough of a depth of play. Like Star Wars Armada doesn't get that much new product, but it's still a blast to play. Same thing goes with Legion right now. The new product is starting to slow down a little bit, especially for Rebels and Empire, but it's still a blast to play every single time. So, a lot of the new product infusion can kind of slow down once, factions get enough depth to kind of fix things up. And I think there's still a lot of fun to be able to be had with Imperial Assault, although they're probably overdue for something new. So we're going to have to wait and see. I think by 2022, we will know what is going on with Imperial Assault. All right, guys, that's all I've got for you today. Hopefully this was helpful, but I hope the big takeaways are that the game is not over until they say it's over. There's still that 3-year plan. There's still licensing issues to work out. and it may go in a new direction with a third edition. They may switch things over to cardboard standees, so this way they're not competing with miniatures. That would bring the cost of the game down. How would you feel, though? What route would you like them to take? Or do you think that they will still continue to go with miniatures in the same way that they do Descent? And then would that be weird having Fantasy Flight still make Star Wars miniatures in the game of Imperial Assault, while Atomic Mass makes miniatures for everything else? Let me know in the comments section. I think it's interesting, and this has been a pretty interesting discussion, but I want to hear from you guys. Also, there's still that giveaway going on right now for the $25 Amazon gift card. And the 12 Days of Life Day is going on. You just have to be a subscriber and leave a comment to get one of these, to be entered to win one of the 12 Days of Life Day giveaways. And that is going to be running all throughout December. I want to thank you guys so much. A big thanks to my patrons as well. You guys are amazing. I could not do this without you. So thank you for your continued support. I will talk to you guys later. Thank you so much. And as always, have a great day.